For those of you just joining us, this is the AAPIGO cast for October 27th, 2021, and we've got a really special set of guests today to discuss all things Alec Baldwin and gun safety. So we have, first off, Iraqveteran8888. Say hi.
Howdy, y'all. Thanks for having me on the show here. How's it going?
Great. And we also have Yehuda, the Pew Pew Jew, back again, but this time in video. So welcome back.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be back with you guys.
Perfect. And yeah, joining me this week and every week, we've got Bobby, Raphael, and Malcolm too.
Hey, good to be here.
All right. Well, yeah, take it away, Raph. I know we've got a lot to discuss today, and I've got a few items planned for our good friend, the Shadow / Kim Basinger's ex-husband.
You could say that more or less. So, I know, Eric, you have some experience, definitely more than any of us, with Hollywood. And so we thought it would be good to get you on, get your perspective on some of this, because we're not necessarily familiar with, say, film gun etiquette, where you obviously sometimes have to point a gun that fires something at somebody. Obviously, generally the idea isn't to shoot somebody, so I wrote up a little timeline of what happened, and I'm hoping you can point out like each step where something went wrong.
I'll certainly try my best.
Explain how it should have worked and maybe how. That's fine. Maybe a gun safety class could have helped Mr. Baldwin. So we have some background. Alec Baldwin is a history of assaulting paparazzi, things like that. This isn't necessarily, this would be thrown out in court as character evidence, I believe. But it's notable for the average person, I think. So there's a day of shooting on this film, Rust. So they decided to do a very short 21-day production schedule on a very low budget, which led to them hiring an armorer who apparently does not know how to shoot and expressed nervousness about handling guns or even loading blanks. So the day of the incident, the same gun that was used, which was a .45 long Colt revolver of unknown make and model, was used for target practice at beer cans with live ammo by various crew members. Later that day, after undisclosed steps happened, it was found on a prop cart and then was handed to Mr. Baldwin while being called cold. So the assistant director handed it to him and said, "Cold gun." And we all know what happened next.
All right. Did the armorer
I assume that's generally not how a film weapon is used.
Right. Did the armorer give Mr. Baldwin the gun?
No, the assistant director, Alex Halls, did.
Okay. Well, there's where you went wrong already, right there. You know, the armorer is the only person authorized to touch any of the firearms.
Okay.
So that right there. So let me tell you a little bit of something. So this lady that everybody keeps dragging through the mud over this, you know, saying all these things they keep regurgitating on the media about her and her gun handling. A lot of people don't know her father was actually a pretty famous armorer back in the 70s and 80s and worked on a lot of films. I mean, had a long career. So she's a second generation armorer, for one. And two, she was, as far as all the accounts that I have heard, she wasn't even there when it happened. So that right there is already a severe breach in protocol. You know, you don't handle guns without the armorer there. The armorer is the only person to load and unload and check and make safe any firearm that's on the set. So that's where things went awry already, right out the get-go. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You'd have a single source of truth who, you know, that person is in charge of the gun.
Right.
So in terms of using a real weapon as a prop weapon, how common is that? Is that something that we see a lot?
Oh, heck yeah. Absolutely. And so the thing is something like if you watch a movie that's got like a machine gun firing blanks or a machine gun being used or some type of automatic, and you can see all that flash coming out of the end and everything. So guns have to be modified specifically in order to run, you know, especially as full auto. It's sometimes hard enough to get a machine gun to run, period, right? But then you start adding, you're running blanks or you're running some type of pyrotechnic or something or some special load that creates a lot of flash, for that flash and all factor. So a lot of your automatics especially have to be modified specially in order to run the action properly and everything like that. And even so, you'll still have some issues from time to time. That's just the nature of it. But in the case of like filming a Western, for instance, anything where, let's say, we're running a shotgun, or we're running a single action revolver, or we're running a bolt action rifle, or a single shot rifle, or anything that doesn't rely on a semi-automatic operation, they most certainly do use live guns for that, because why would you really even need to modify the gun at all? All you're going to do is just change out the ammunition you're using. So yeah, a lot of guns that the thing is, people throw around this term prop gun, but a prop gun would be a fake gun, right? When we say prop gun, you're referring to a rubber duck that you can throw around for an action sequence or something like that, or a gun that needs to be thrown down a staircase or something like that, or a fight scene, like in Quigley Down Under, for instance. When, on all the fighting scenes and everything, they had this rubber duck rifle that was made for Matthew, the character in Quigley, to use in the fighting scene, so they wouldn't ruin the real rifle. That's a prop gun, is a fake gun you fight with and do action scenes and things like that. But even a blank firing gun is still treated with a degree of safety that would be treated with any other firearm, of course. But in the case of a single action revolver, you can run blanks out of a revolver, no problem. But that same gun can still shoot live ammunition, of course. And that's been pretty standard for a long time.
Just a quick clarification. Like, could you explain like what a blank is? And I know there's like history of like people shooting blanks, but the blanks also being able to hurt someone as well. So if you could kind of like clarify what a blank is and how it can also hurt someone.
Yeah, like wasn't Brandon Lee shot by a blank technically too? Or
yeah. So there's a lot of different stuff with blanks, right? I mean, with smokeless powder, you have to have a special crimp die that puts this star-shaped crimp on there in order to load your own smokeless blanks. And if the case isn't annealed really well, it can actually work harden and get brittle. And there have been cases where tiny shards of brass come off of those star-shaped crimps that can find their way down range and can, impact with enough velocity, break the skin. Most of the time, it's just an irritant. But in the case of what we're talking about with the Baldwin incident, all the blanks that they would have been using more than likely would have been black powder blanks. And see, the cool thing about loading black powder blanks is that you're going to load the cartridge the same as you would just any other cartridge, except you're just going to put some type of a filler on top to burn the powder up, and you'll get a bit of a smoke poof out the end. I mean, if you watch any of the old school Westerns and you see that just little puff of smoke, it comes out, the black powder. So black powder is really easy to make a blank for, because you essentially load the cartridge the same way you would load it any other way. You just don't use a live projectile on top of it. Now, the Brandon Lee issue, what happened there is apparently there was an inexperienced armorer that, pulled a projectile or something, or had a squib in the barrel, basically didn't check the barrel before they started filming. It might have been a gun that had a squib, a live round shot through it, and it was a squib or something like that. And then they put a blank in behind it, and then that projectile just made it into the forcing cone of the revolver, and then the blank cartridge had enough power to unfortunately end Brandon's life prematurely, unfortunately. That really sucks that happened. So there's a series of things that you'd want to check, obviously, if you're going to start slinging blanks at people in a film. I mean, you want to make sure there's no barrel obstructions. You want to absolutely triple check all your ammunition, make sure the gun's clean and in working order. And even still, even with a blank, there's still protocols. I mean, you don't shoot too close. I mean, the cameramen, when they're filming, like if they're going to do a down the bore shot or something with a blank, or an execution scene or something, every degree of safety is carefully and considered in every way. The cameramen use shields and glass and all sorts of things. So it's a pretty, exacting thing that they do.
Yeah, it sounds like approximately the opposite of what happened on this particular set. Yeah, so
right.
We also, early on we saw some saw some rumors that maybe it was a blank and something happened, but considering that the bullet has been recovered and traveled through one person before striking another, I think we can rule that out relatively safely. What about crew members having live ammo on set and the same gun being used by other people? Like, what kind of problem is that? Because obviously you shouldn't do that. But in terms of things you shouldn't do, how bad does that rank?
Well, I'd say it's probably strongly discouraged, of course, but that doesn't stop, people from doing that sort of thing. Now, I guess the one question that I would have, and this is not information I'm privy to or that I know, so I'm not going to claim to know, but I would want to know if the revolver in question was in fact a gun that had previously been used on the show as a prop or as a gun on the show. That would be one question I would have. And two, who introduced the live ammunition to the set? Because that's who your culprit is. So if the armorer left for the day and would only bring blanks to the set in order to run the show or whatever, and then somebody decided to go down to the local gun shop and pick up some live ammo and do some practicing or playing around after hours, after the armorer had already left the set, well, then there's your answer. I mean, that's really where the answer lies. Whoever brought the live ammo to the set or authorized the live ammo to show up there, regardless of what the circumstances of the situation is, that would ultimately be the person that is the culprit there. So if Alex said, hey, I want to shoot some beer cans and went and got live ammo, well, he's saying that someone handed him a gun and said it was cold, or if the assistant director, whoever handed him the gun, is the person that introduced the ammo into the situation and not the armorer, well, then that's who the blame would fall on. Ultimately, the question is, were they filming when this occurred? When this shooting occurred, were they filming?
Unfortunately, or fortunately,
they were not.
they were. The camera was not rolling yet.
Just dress rehearsal, I think.
The rumor, the scuttlebutt that I heard.
They were probably blocking or
Yeah,
something.
the scuttlebutt that I heard was Alec was told he had to do another take, and then jokingly was like, "Well, how about I just kill you, or how about I just shoot you," and then did.
Right.
That is.
Yeah, I heard that as well. Yeah, I heard that it was confirmed that it's false.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
But I mean,
see, that's not
who knows?
reality. That's not how this works, right? They were either filming or they weren't. So were they filming a scene or weren't they? I mean, that's the bottom line.
they were filming a scene. The camera was not rolling.
Okay.
At least that's what CNN.
So they're
says.
filming a scene, but was the armorer there?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And
Where was the armorer?
The armorer was not on the set at the time.
Right.
But the armorer had previously prepped all three guns for that specific scene.
Wow.
yeah,
And
so I guess my question would be, does Alec Baldwin face any culpability in that situation? Because when you're at the range, you're always taught to make sure the weapon is clear first. All firearms are loaded. One of the basic rules of firearm safety. Are actors just not expected to do that, and they're just totally in the hands of the armorer for the most part?
Yeah, generally so. That duty is pretty much up to the armorer. I mean, if you got to think too, a lot of people that do work with firearms in movies, right? A lot of those folks are not always gun people. I mean, they might have some basic degree of what they're doing, but it's not like they're super dyed in the wool, pro 2A or pro gun, or they go and practice on a regular basis. They might have some tiny degree of training just to do whatever they need to do to get through the scene or whatever the character action calls for or whatever. But at the end of the day, someone who's not a gun person is not going to, go and check every little tiny thing. So it's a complicated matter because ultimately, if you're doing some type of scene where you've got to shoot blanks at someone, if the armorer hands you a gun and it's full of blanks, well, you're not going to assume that there'd be live ammo in it. But now there would be some degree of responsibility, though, if, let's say, live ammo had been fired in the gun at any point during that day and you knew it, and you were going to take said gun that you just shot live ammo through, or you saw someone else shoot live ammo through, and assume that there were blanks in the gun and not live ammo. I mean, I think anyone with any degree of common sense would instantly go, hey, you guys were shooting earlier. Are we absolutely sure before we roll this that this is blanks, right? That's what any gun person would do. Anyone with any degree of safety in mind would probably double check. Now, yeah, the director might yell at you. The prop people might yell at you. They might get pissed. The sound people might yell at you. The armorer might yell at you. But you know what? He's the freaking producer. Okay, he can do whatever the hell he wants. So if he was a gun person and had any foresight, he could have easily said, you know, let's double check this, right? That's what I would do. If I were in his situation, I would most certainly double and triple check every single anytime a gun's being handled. I would most certainly triple check and you know, make sure everything's right.
I mean,
Yeah, I guess that's kind of where we're in this scenario where it's like a big deal because Alec wasn't just the actor; he was also the producer, and like for him, like the level of responsibility as a producer is much higher. And as Joe Biden likes to say, like the buck stops with him. So I mean, like either way you put it, like it's his responsibility. So if it's not his responsibility as like an actor, but definitely as a producer.
Well, in that vein, question for Yehuda. You know, given that it sounds like gun safety education isn't the best in Hollywood, if we had to recommend one of your books to SAG-AFTRA or DAG, which one would it be?
If you're talking about gun safety, then yes, Safety On, my first book. That book touches on all aspects of gun safety, and now I'm thinking about maybe I should write a sequel about gun handling on a Hollywood set. But one thing that struck me with this whole scenario is no matter who it is to blame, at the end of the day, and I'm not saying Alec Baldwin's to blame. I'm not saying he's not to blame. But what I am going to say is I'm sure we've all seen that video of Will Smith on the doing the props of Bad Boy 3. I don't know if you've seen that video, but I believe it was the armor picks up a gun and completely flags Will Smith, and he just slaps the guy's gun down. Literally hits his hand. It was like poor gun safety. And if you are going to be someone dealing with a tool, because we all know guns are tools, it is your responsibility to understand how that tool works. Now, again, I'm not putting blame on anything because I'm sure there's so much information that none of us know. However, I really do think that there should be a standard that if you are a actor or someone in Hollywood who are going to be using guns for whatever scene, whatever movie you can do, there has to be a level of gun safety that the actors themselves should take, and that they should be able to see, like, no, this is a real round. It's not a blank. It's their. I'm not saying it's their responsibility, but I think there should be something in place that will allow them to really understand the ins and outs of firearms. And I mean, look at the Will Smith standard. I mean, that's despite what you might think about his politics, that video is spot on by him, and he did a fantastic job.
Will Smith is notably trained at Terran Tactical, and I think you can kind of group Hollywood people into two groups in terms of gun safety: those who have trained at Terran Tactical and those who haven't. They have a lot of big names, and they're fantastic. Well, I hadn't really noticed this until now, but I don't think I've ever seen anybody who's actually trained at Terran Tactical come out and make a far-reaching statement of the anti-gun variety. At least since they've been there, I haven't seen Keanu Reeves say anything negative about the Second Amendment. I haven't seen Will Smith recently say anything negative about the Second Amendment. Maybe we should make it mandatory for actors.
A lot of them are.
Yeah, you certainly get to play with a lot of interesting toys that aren't legal in California.
A lot of them.
A lot of them are pro-gun. They're
Well,
just not ever
you
going to
sound-
make their position known.
Yeah, you sound like you know, but I want to ask you to name names.
You know, and what's odd too is also the music. You know,
I've-
musicians are the same way. Like, there's a lot of folks in the music world you would never think are into guns, but I mean, I can't necessarily say which ones, but there's a few guys that are famous musicians you certainly hear on the radio probably every day, and one of them has one of the largest collections of transferable HK machine guns in the U.S. But you'd never know it.
Very interesting.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'd have to imagine a lot of crew and people that are carrying around expensive equipment must be CCW holders too. Is that the case in your experience?
Oh yeah, of course, absolutely. You know, a lot of those musicians were on the tour and everything like that. They absolutely have dudes that are carrying. I mean, they got to be able to. I mean, you got a guy that's got a $350,000, you know, 1959 Burst or something, you know, vintage Les Paul that's worth a house. Yeah, you better believe there's somebody packing some heat, protecting that stuff for sure.
Yeah.
So, do you think this incident in particular was just a breakdown of like existing functional firearms protocol on film set, or do you think there's maybe modifications that need to be made to standard protocols in order to avoid this kind of thing in the future? Is this a series of coincidences that turned into a tragedy, or is it a systemic problem?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. Okay, do they film with live ammo regularly? Is that part of the filming process, is using live ammunition? If that answer is no,
I can't imagine that.
right. Well, if that answer is no, well, then obviously something has been introduced to protocol that is outside of the standard. So, has the armorer in question ever shown up with live ammo to film as part of some odd protocol? If the answer is no, well, then really what this comes down to is, how was the live ammunition introduced into the situation? And that's where your answer is. Now, is that to say that that fault specifically falls on whoever introduced the live ammunition? Well, that's a huge part of it, because without live ammunition, this wouldn't have happened. So, of course, that's a situation. But I wanted to mention something earlier about what you guys were talking about, you know, the training aspect, like where, you know, folks go out to see Terran Butler and do training at Terran Tactical and do their thing. And you tend to see a couple of different situations evolve from that. All right. Someone gets some real meaningful firearms training, and they come out of that situation with a newfound respect for firearms. There's two ways that they could sort of look at that, right? One is that they understand how much time it takes for someone to get really good at working with guns, but they almost sort of have that expectation of people around them, right? So, like, if you've gone through the minutia of learning every bit of training, like look at Halle Berry. Okay, to train for John Wick, she had to go out. Went out and did the same thing. Did a lot of training to learn her way around firearms so she could portray her character properly in the John Wick film there. But I think they end up kind of looking at it like, well, if I can get the training, other people should try to go out of their way to learn a little bit as well. So I think some of them do come out of it turning sort of pro gun from the situation. I think that's an astute observation for sure. But now to get back to your original question though about, okay, was there a breach in protocol and should there be a more strict protocol? I think that anytime you're working around guns, no matter what it might be, I mean, on a busy week, we film 3 days out of the week with guns, right? This last year we logged 250,000 rounds of ammo and didn't have a single issue, not a single injury, right? But all of my people, cameramen, whoever's on set, whatever we're doing, we're all gun people, and we know that there's certain protocols that you don't breach. Now, my situation, admittedly, is considerably different because we don't point the guns at each other and do action scenes and shoot blanks, and we don't, so there is a different element to mainstream Hollywood because it is normal. All right, when you're on a Hollywood set, it's normal to assume that if you were to pick up a gun and use it for the scene, that the gun is not going to kill someone, right? So it's a normal assumption for an actor to go, well, I'm being handed this gun to do this scene. Obviously, the thing ain't going to be loaded with live ammo. Who would do that? I understand their logic in thinking, well, everything is good because this is a Hollywood scene and nothing could ever go wrong. But I think that there should certainly be a little bit more care put into the training that actors go through to try to, help them understand, that guns are dangerous objects, and many of them may hate guns, right? Like Liam Neeson hates guns. Obviously, Alec Baldwin hates guns. Jamie Foxx is not a big gun guy. So there's a lot of people that use guns in movies, but they may not necessarily like the idea of civilian gun ownership or whatever. And some of them, honestly, view it with an air of, elitism, right? They think, well, I went through all these classes and I did this and I did that, and I'm Mr. So-and-so, makes millions of dollars. Well, if I need to do it, well, it's because society is designating me to do it because I'm the guy that has to be in the movie. So they have this sort of limited scope view that, well, guns are necessary for my job. This isn't reality. It's easy for them to say, well, this isn't reality. This is just Hollywood. So of course we have to have guns here because we have to make a film. But when they leave, they're not thinking, oh, I'm going to go buy a new Glock or whatever,
So I'll tell you, I actually looked up the SAG-AFTRA guidelines on firearms on set. And I will tell you, I was thoroughly impressed how much care and education they put into their guidelines about having, whether it's blanks, whether it's props, whether it's live ammo, real guns. I mean, they really do a good job of breaking it down and pretty spot on with what all of us would actually believe, especially in the firearms industry. What I'm pretty sure of is that if you ask any action star to list what are some of the rules in the SAG-AFTRA gun policy, they will not be able to tell you. So, they're definitely, the rules are there. I read them myself. The rules are there. It's just a matter of people don't read the fine print. They just pass it over, sign their name, and it is what it is.
Well, given that this was filmed in New Mexico versus, Hollywood, where obviously like SAG-AFTRA has a larger presence and larger scrutiny, do you think that has kind of a factor to it, or is it just a union film crew anyway out there, regardless of location?
I mean, I'm sure Eric can answer better, but I don't think that it has anything to do with it, right? SAG-AFTRA is this. I mean, it's a guild for actors. It's not located just to Los Angeles. It's part of Hollywood filming. It's all about policies that all actors have to follow. I'm gonna guess no matter where they are, right? Whether it's America, Europe, if you're I mean, now granted, yes, I'm talking about like American actors, American companies filming in Europe, not necessarily European film companies because they have different rules than us. But I mean, Eric, am I wrong?
Well, depends on the circumstances. I mean, generally, heck yeah. Absolutely. If it's a union crew and the gilded crew, like they've gone through and they've joined every single guild and union that they possibly could be a part of, absolutely. But it depends on the production. Okay. All right. Say, for instance, I want to make an action movie. All right. And I want to self-produce it. Okay. I can hire whoever the freaking heck I want to. I can hire my own armorer, my own photographers, my own sound guys, my own, whatever. Every single person that's involved in a set, I can handpick those people and I can hire them. Now, there's nothing that dictates that I have to do things a certain way. I can do it whatever dang way I want if I'm the producer. And from what I understand, this was, maybe a shoestring budget, 31 days of filming, that's limited. So I understand there's a time crunch. And, if Mr. Baldwin was paying for this thing out of pocket and spending a boatload of money, who knows? I can't sit here and speculate, and I won't dare speculate who he hired or what the manner was in their hiring or how they handled all that. One would assume someone with his background in terms of how he looks at the Second Amendment and guns, and he's not very pro-gun, probably, a union crew, pretty much standard fare Hollywood union crew kind of thing. I mean, just because you have a crew that's used to filming in Hollywood and doing their thing doesn't mean you can't film anywhere in the United States. I mean, I could bring that same crew to Georgia. They're going to conduct themselves in exactly the same manner they would as if we were filming out in Hollywood. So I would venture to say within a huge percentile that you're absolutely correct in assuming that, yeah, I mean, they're going to operate within a certain margin of standard, and that would be completely safe bet to say that's protocol they use.
Well, speaking of standards, looks like Democratic lawmaker Dave Cortese, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is proposing a ban on live weapons on movie sets in the wake of this. Curious to get your thoughts on that. Should be an interesting conversation there.
I mean, honestly, it's what liberals do, right? They're blaming the gun, not the user. So was it? I mean, the minute that happened, I don't know about anyone else. I was like completely expected. Like, I'm not shocked by any means that they're going straight for the gun and not saying, hey, like we just talked about, hey, no, if you're an actor that is going to be dealing with firearms in a movie, you need to go through a very intense gun safety course, which would be the proper course of action, but they're not. They're going after the guns.
Yeah, the knee-jerk reaction of restricting rights is something I think we're all too familiar with. And FBC, our dear friends, have actually, in true form, come out and announced that they will be opposing and suing if this law makes it through.
Yeah, I was joking with a friend that they're going to replace guns on movies with a green banana and just CGI everything.
That would be true.
Yeah, I even thought like some of the descriptions that came out around the event from the media were funny. Like there was one that said like ammunition flew toward the audience after Baldwin handled the gun. It was like he shot the guy, and you're saying the ammunition like magically flew at him.
Yeah, I think one of the first headlines I saw was a crew member was hit by a bullet after Alec Baldwin used a prop gun on film set. I think we can just go ahead and say that Alec Baldwin shot a person. Like that is a reasonable description of the headline.
Mm-hmm.
I certainly would not think that that what he did was malicious or purposeful, by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, nobody would go, well, let me just shoot this person. So I don't think anyone's doubting that, the guy didn't know what the heck was going on. In regards to the bill, I don't think that will ever go anywhere because Hollywood, as much as we view Hollywood in general as being like super anti-gun and everything like that, and believe me, they are holistically pretty anti-gun when it comes to civilian firearms ownership. Now, when it comes to prop houses, they have millions of dollars in prop guns. There are prop houses that have armories that would just, you drool over if you saw how many prop guns they had. And when you think about every famous movie that's ever been made involving a firearm, right? All right, whether it's like an M16 with a Mossberg shotgun attached to the bottom, like in Predator, or a minigun, or any famous gun you can ever think of, Ripley's gun that she taped all the crap to and had the flamethrower taped to it. Like all of those prop guns are a thing. Like so I think that as anti-gun as Hollywood might be generally, though, I don't think that they would ever acquiesce to the idea of giving up their real prop guns in a knee-jerk reaction to something like this. I mean, I think there's a certain degree of risk that they accept as being associated with using guns in movies, and I think the actors accept that risk. The photographers and all the folks on set accept that risk, and ultimately the underwriters and everybody that's paying for this whole thing accept that risk. Or it wouldn't be a thing ever, since they've been making movies using guns from the dawn of time, since we've been using guns in movies. So if that were an issue, it would have been an issue 100 years ago, not now. So it's not going to start now. That train's already left.
So for the first time in history, Hollywood may be opposing a firearm restriction bill.
Not publicly.
Well, I've always been kind of curious too, like,
of course.
Yeah. Well, kind of curious too, like, I mean, how does the process work for Hollywood to actually buy an off-roster handgun like that? I mean, is it just like the armorer has a special FFL license to be able to do it, and they technically own the gun, or is it like the studio is able to do it? Because it's like, you can see Glock Gen 5s as far as the eye can see on a movie set, but go to your local gun store, not so much in California.
That's correct. So most of them will have an SOT. In fact, we just got our SOT. All right. And weird thing is, you put in your paperwork, you submit it, and you'll have an IOI contact you. And so normally when you do they'll normally have what they call a site inspection, and they'll send someone out to come inspect your storage facility, your security measures, interview you. So they have an interview. Well, our SOT was handled through a phone interview because all the COVID stuff going on. And it was a very painless process, very easy. And of course, one of the things they ask you is, all right, well, why are you getting the SOT? What reasoning, right? Well, in terms of the Hollywood types, having a prop house for film and demonstration purposes is most certainly a valid reason to have an SOT and get their manufacturing license. And many times a Hollywood prop house, depending on where they are and what they're filming, they'll have a federal explosives license. They'll have their manufacturing license. And absolutely, they can order whatever the heck they want. Most of the time, they'll have a local Clio that can give them sign off on whatever they need for prop purposes. So, yeah, if they want to call up, for instance, Carr Firearms and order an Auto Ordnance Thompson machine gun for a movie, they get the sign-off letter with the letterhead. They get it signed off. They contact Carr. Carr produces the machine gun. They ship it to them, and that's it. So they can get machine guns. So getting a Gen 5 Glock, regardless of what California's laws might be, the state laws are irrelevant because the SOT, the manufacturing license, is a federal license. So that doesn't have anything to do with state laws. As an SOT, I can take my mutant machine gun, get on an airplane, and I can fly anywhere in all 50 states and film and do whatever I need to do because it's an SOT. It's a federal license.
So they enjoy more freedoms than your average Joe while still advocating against them. And congratulations on the SOT. That's pretty cool. So I assume more full auto on the channel?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I just got 2 Steyr AUG kits in that we're going to build machine guns. So, yeah, we're building 2 Steyr AUGs. We got those on the way that we're working on. I just got a machine gun bolt for my APC, my B&T. So I'll have a full auto APC 9K. Got that pack. So it's super easy. You just make it and tell them you made it, and that's it. And you engrave it, put it on the books, that's it.
Will you be carrying a Glock 18C?
I mean, anything possible, I suppose.
There you go. Yeah, Bobby actually is in the process of opening his own shop right now. So I think, Bobby, you got your FFL, right?
I met with the ATF, and it's just waiting until they like go through the process and finally approve it. And then from there, it's just a lot of state and local paperwork that needs to be done. But I plan on getting my SOT, and then with some luck, I'll be able to get the assault weapons permit here as well. And we can have some fun.
You're in California, Bobby?
Yep, I'm in California.
So does California have any kind of weird special requirements in order for you to get your FFL?
So there's multiple layers actually. So in the city where the shop is being opened in the city of San Jose, I have to get a San Jose firearms resale permit. And in order to get my resale permit, I need an FFL. But in order for me to get an FFL, I need to rent a space that the city says it's zoned for. So that's the biggest thing is zoning. So like San Jose out of the Bay Area has one of like the more loose zoning regulations. So like firearms retail is considered any other retail. So if I find a retail space, then it's good. There's other cities around that don't need any special permit, but require you to go through basically a board or a panel. And it's never going to go through the panel because everyone here like hates guns. So yeah, I mean luckily I was able to find a space. It meets the zoning requirements. It meets like all the local state or the local city requirements. Therefore, like ATF, they're able to give me the license. So I'm getting the FFL 7, which is a manufacturing license, and they were a little bit worried because it was zoned as commercial instead of manufacturing. But then, like the amount of quote unquote manufacturing that I'll be doing is very minimal. That the city was okay. They're calling it like incidental. So if the manufacturing is incidental, while the main business is still commercial. So just a lot of hoops to jump through.
So California is probably the exception, not the rule, though, when it comes to the severity of
yeah. Like, I mean, I have a...
Right, how hard it is to get an FFL. You know, California is probably a pretty terrible situation.
Yeah, and like I have a brother, my brother-in-law lives in Tennessee, and I'm sure like other places as well. Like I have friends in Colorado that you can have an FFL like in your home.
That's even the case
and
where I live.
Some places in California as well. Yeah, it's like different
transfers and stuff.
Yeah, but in the Bay Area at least, that's not really possible. Maybe if I went out to like Sacramento, a little bit more east, like that's more of a possibility. But kind of Bay Area, not allowing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I actually got my Walther PDP from a home FFL in Sacramento, which is just weird because it's an hour and a half away, and totally different world legal wise.
But then again, those of us on the coasts must. Our problems must sound so weird. Like, all you have to worry about down south is getting ammo.
Pretty much.
Hey, I did my jail time for 30 years in Los Angeles. Now I live in the great state of Texas. So I put in my time. I tried. And
I don't think my wife will ever forgive me for importing her from Tennessee.
Yeah.
Do you miss the food though? I mean, like In-N-Out and all the
Texas is better.
All that Texas is better.
I mean,
now I can definitively say
I disagree. LA food, the food culture in LA is insane. I love my Korean barbecue. I love my Chinese food, my Vietnamese food. I love street food. I mean, like LA has it all at all like price brackets as well. So I mean,
I only eat kosher, so never had In-N-Out, never had any of that stuff. So
Well, you
The
can
only
have
thing I miss
not
is
a
the weather.
cheeseburger then, right?
Well, it has to be
Well, obviously with cooked
yeah.
beef, but in terms of
Right.
types of food, yeah.
Yeah, no, no. I mean, you can definitely find Chinese food and I mean, I make great hamburgers. I make chicken wings here, but like in terms of going out to restaurants in Dallas where I live, I mean, there's like nothing. So, but it was one of those situations where my wife and I had to decide like, do we want a place that has a vibrant Jewish community, but we'll never be able to afford a house or live our lives the way we want? Or do we give up having, a vibrant Jewish community, moving to a smaller community, which means not as many kosher amenities and, Jewish amenities that we would have in LA? And we decided to move to Texas, and that was 7 years ago, and not a day goes by that we have any regrets.
Yeah, my one regret moving from Portland to California was that I wasn't into guns at the time, so I could have bought so many wonderful like off-roster handguns and like almost anything up there, but just wasn't into it when I was up there.
Yeah, see now, and
Makes me sad.
I'm the opposite, right? I was into guns. I had 3 guns in LA, and now I have a lot more, and it's fantastic. I remember when I just moved to Texas, I brought my AR-15 to a gunsmith near my house, and I walk in and I'm like, "Hi, I just moved from Los Angeles." And he goes, "Well, what'd you bring me today?" I'm like, "My AR-15." And he goes, "All right, give it to me." I didn't even have to tell him to take the bullet button out. He immediately knew what I was going to ask him to do, and he took the bullet button out in a few minutes. And I asked him, I said, "Hey, is there any place here that you sell 30-round mags?" Because I was only allowed 10. And he goes, "We have 30-round mags in the front, but can I offer you a 60-round drum?" And I was just like, God, I don't miss LA.
Yeah, that was my experience like visiting Nevada recently. My parents like just moved there for retirement, and then I went to a gun store there, and it was like, yeah, 100-round drum mags just on the show floor, and silencers too.
Yeah.
Whenever I leave,
easy.
Whenever I leave the state, I don't go to other cities if I can help it. Just rural areas, seeing random people open carrying whatever is just it's heartwarming. All right. I think.
Yeah, I miss Texas, man. I miss Texas, and this governor race here in Virginia is making us all
we're
antsy.
Running low on time for most people here, and I think we've covered what we came to cover.
Yeah.
That being said, Eric, if you want to come on back anytime, I would be glad to have you.
Sure. Hopefully, I got into some territory that made sense to you guys.
Yeah, and you covered stuff that I had no idea about.
Yeah, it's fascinating, like learning about the ins and outs, the firearms industry and film.
Yeah.
Anything you want to plug or for our audience for final thoughts?
If you guys want to check out our Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit podcast, that's something that Matt and I from Ballistic Inc. have been working on pretty hard in these last year or so, and we've really been wanting to push that. And I do want to start bringing some more guests on for LLP, so maybe we can get some of you guys here in on that, do an episode with you. We're working on a new set, so that's one limitation that we've had, and also we've got a few technological limitations like internet and cameras and crap like that we're still trying to work out. But once we get that rolling and we can do kind of I might look at you for some advice on this Riverside thing you're using here. I might look into that for recording podcasts in the future, but we can definitely have y'all in and we'll do an LLP episode for sure.
Very cool. I'll send you the
awesome.
I'll send you the technical details once we're off, but I think you'll like it. It's worked out really well for us, even with poor internet. So
great.
Yeah. And thank you, Huda, for coming on, especially at such short notice. And
yeah, buy bullet points. New York Times, right?
Yeah, that book is still got God, I can't even tell you how much hate I'm still getting from it. It's fantastic. It's still pissing people off on the left, pissing people off on the right. The amount of gun owners that have come after me without even reading the description of the book, just judging the book by its cover, has just been. I mean, it's exactly why I wrote the book, and it's been great to see people lose their minds. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I just ordered a signed copy, so looking forward to reading it.
You'll get it. You just ordered it now?
Oh, like a couple days ago.
Oh, okay. So then I probably sent it out.
Awesome. Cool. Well, yeah, thanks again, everyone, for joining us on the AAPIGO cast. We'll see you next time.